My father used to tell a lot of stories about the war, World War II, when he was a tanker. And he passed away in 1980. When he died, I realized I remembered almost nothing from the stories that he told, a detail here, a name there. And I felt badly that I never sat down with him and recorded his stories. Then, 6 years later, I found a newsletter from his old outfit, the 712th Tank Battalion. Now that's the cap that I'm wearing is from the 712th. A lot of people say, were you in the 712th in World War II? They mistake me for a World War II veteran. I was not in the war, but I did get this from his outfit. I went to a reunion of the 712th in 1987, hoping to find people who remembered my dad, and I found 3. And I would tell them a detail, the name of a town, Dillingen, where he was wounded, and all of the stories he told when I was a kid came back to life. At the same time, they had a hospitality room. This was 1987, that's 21 years ago. And I would stand in the hospitality room, I'd walk in the middle of a story that somebody was telling, and it was like somebody took crazy glue and put it on my shoes. I was transfixed until the story ended. They would be going out to lunch, and somebody would open the car door, and one of them would start telling a story. It'd be 15 minutes before the car door closed because he had to finish that story. It was so compelling. And I thought, gee, you know, even though my dad told a lot of stories, most of them were humorous. And the stories I'm hearing, a lot of families never hear. So I missed the next reunion, but I went back 2 years later in 1989 with a tape recorder. And I would hear a story in the hospitality room or the parking lot, and I would grab the veteran by the arm, and I would say, would you mind telling me that story that I just heard you tell in the hospitality room? And I would plunk the tape recorder down on the table, and I would get the story down on tape, you know, and then one thing led to another. And as I learned the history of the battalion, I was able to focus my questions a lot better. When I started out, you know, I would just ask basic questions, you know, were you wounded? How was the food? Were you scared? You know, then I learned a little better. I would say, how scared were you? Or how bad was the food? But I also learned about specific places, you know, and I could say, were you at Oberwampak, or can you tell me about this or that? And I thought, you know, gee, these stories would make a great book. So I put the stories into a book, and I called the book Tanks for the Memories. My father was in the 712th Tank Battalion. I did not think of that title. They had it on a bumper sticker. It said, Tanks for the Memories, 712th Tank Battalion from World War II. So the book came out, and Armor magazine called it Must Reading for Every Tank. I could interview more comprehensively than something you might see in a documentary or just a random interview. Over the years, I probably collected maybe 600 hours of 90-minute cassettes of these interviews. I realized I had to preserve these. And then along came writable CDs. So I packaged them in groups of usually 10 or 11 CDs, because that's all I can fit in the case. And they were getting a good reaction. When I started my website, tankbooks.com, and I went into the audio production, I thought I need a different website to focus on the audio books. So I started audiomurphy.com. It's just got sound clips that you can listen to. So that's how I got to be doing what I'm doing at the Mid-Atlantic Air Museum Air Show.